The Unraveling of Kim Plath. She spent years standing in that kitchen, ruling over her children with a Bible in one hand and a list of rules in the other. No sugar, no television, no friends outside the family, no life that she didn't personally approve of. Kim Plath built an empire on control, raising 9 children in a bubble so tight that the outside world might as well have not existed. And now, after everything, the divorce, the DUI, the boyfriend who won't go away, she's come back to the family farm with a new demand: respect. She says it's non-negotiable. The woman who spent decades demanding absolute obedience from her children is now asking them for something she never gave. And here's the part that makes this whole thing sting. They learned from the best. They learned how to set boundaries, how to hold firm, and how to make respect a requirement. They just learned it by watching her. What happens when the architect of control walks back into a house where she no longer holds the cards? What happens when the children she raised to submit are now the ones telling her that respect goes both ways? This is the story of how Kim Plath's quest for a second chance backfired in ways she never saw coming. And trust me, by the time we're done, you'll understand why this season might be the one that changes everything for this family. Before we dive in, if you're the kind of person who loves digging into the real stories behind reality TV, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We don't just recap what happened, we break down why it happened and what it means for the people involved. Now let's get into it. You have to understand who Kim Plath was before you can understand why this moment matters so much. For years, she was the unquestioned authority in that household. She and Barry built a world where the children had no exposure to anything beyond what they approved. No pop music, no sugary drinks, no dating, no independence. The older kids have talked about it openly, how they couldn't even have friends over, how they were homeschooled in isolation, how every aspect of their lives was monitored and controlled. Kim wasn't just a mother, she was the gatekeeper of reality itself. And here's the thing about control. When you hold it that tightly for that long, you start to believe it's your natural right. You stop seeing your children as individuals with their own needs and start seeing them as extensions of your will. Kim genuinely believed she was protecting them. She's talked about her own childhood trauma, being abused by a babysitter when she was just 4 or 5 years old, and she said that experience drove her to be overprotective. But protection and control are two different things. And somewhere along the way, Kim crossed that line without even noticing. The children grew up, or at least they got older. They started pushing back. Ethan married Olivia and suddenly had a whole new perspective on his upbringing. Mariah started wearing dark clothes and makeup and wanting to sing secular music. Micah moved to California and became a model. One by one, they slipped out of her grasp. And Kim? She didn't handle it well. She banned Olivia from seeing the younger kids. She kicked Mariah and Micah out when they wouldn't follow her rules. She used friends and social media to spy on them after they left. The control didn't stop just because they weren't under her roof anymore. It just changed form. Then came the divorce. 24 years of marriage, gone. Kim and Barry announced their separation in late 2021, and by 2024, the divorce was official. For Kim, this was supposed to be her liberation. She'd spent her entire adult life as a wife and mother, and now she was free to discover who she was outside those roles. And discover she did. Almost immediately, she started dating Ken Palmer, an aviation instructor she'd met somewhere along the way. The timing raised eyebrows. The divorce wasn't even final when Ken entered the picture, and suddenly Kim was living in Florida, starting a whole new life. But here's where it gets complicated. Ken came with baggage. In 2023, reports surfaced about his controversial social media posts, things that made people uncomfortable, things that made the family uncomfortable. Kim tried to manage the damage. Last season, she stated publicly that she and Ken were no longer together. She said it on camera. She let viewers believe she'd chosen her family over this relationship that was causing so much tension. There was just one problem with that story. It wasn't true. The TLC press release for season 8 dropped recently, and it confirmed what many fans had already suspected. Kim and Ken are back together. Not only are they back together, but she's moved back to the family farm in Georgia, and Ken is right there with her. The press release puts it delicately. It says Kim is rekindling her relationship with boyfriend Ken and leaning into growth and second chances. But here's what that actually means in practice. Kim spent last year telling her family and the public that she'd ended things with Ken to protect her relationships with her children. Now she's showing up with him in tow, expecting everyone to just accept it. That's not rekindling, that's rewriting history. And the children, they remember what was said. They remember being told that Ken was out of the picture. They remember being asked to give their mother another chance because she'd made sacrifices for them. Now they're finding out those sacrifices might have been fictional. It puts them in an impossible position. If they accept Ken, they're accepting that their mother lied to them. If they reject Ken, they're the ones who can't forgive and move on. Kim has painted them into a corner, and she probably doesn't even realize she's done it. The Lydia situation makes this even more painful. Lydia was always Kim's girl, the one who took over the housework, who embraced the religious teachings, who seemed genuinely happy in that sheltered world. When the older kids started rebelling, Lydia stayed close. When the divorce happened, Lydia tried to hold things together. She was the bridge between Kim and the rest of the family, the one who still believed her mother deserved grace and understanding. But last season changed everything. Lydia got married to Zach Wise, and the family's reaction was devastating. Instead of celebrating, some family members questioned whether Zach was controlling Lydia. They speculated about his sexuality. They suggested Lydia might be manipulated into the marriage. And where was Kim during all of this? Reports indicate she was part of the problem, the gossip, the speculation, the undermining of Lydia's relationship. Kim had a hand in it. For Lydia, that was a line that couldn't be uncrossed. She'd stood by her mother through everything, and this was how Kim repaid her, by joining in the attacks on her marriage. Now, in the season 8 trailer, we see the aftermath. Lydia is done being the peacekeeper. She's done absorbing everyone else's dysfunction. In one clip, she sits down with her mother for what's supposed to be a heart-to-heart conversation. Kim says, "You and I used to be really close before the divorce." And Lydia's response cuts straight to the bone. She says, "Whenever I would talk to you, it just felt like I was talking to a brick wall." Think about what that means coming from Lydia. This is a girl who was raised to honor her parents, to submit to authority, to believe that family loyalty was everything. For her to say those words, to admit that her mother was emotionally unavailable when she needed connection, that's not just frustration. That's grief. That's the sound of someone who's finally stopped pretending. Barry, surprisingly, seems to be the one who sees the situation most clearly. In the trailer, he comments directly on the tension between Lydia and Kim. He says there's healing that's needed, and he's right. But healing requires both parties to acknowledge the wound. It requires an apology. And when Kim is asked directly if she plans to apologize to Lydia and Zach, her response is telling. She pauses. She looks uncertain. And then she says 3 words that probably broke Lydia's heart all over again. "I don't know." Here's what makes this moment so significant. Lydia is no longer waiting for her mother to figure it out. In the trailer, there's a scene where she's clearly had enough. She tells her family, in no uncertain terms, that she will not tolerate the gossip and mistreatment anymore. She says, "If I find out that they're still gossiping about Zach and I will not tolerate it." This is Lydia setting a boundary. Lydia, the people pleaser. Lydia, the one who always smoothed things over. Lydia, the daughter who was so conditioned to put everyone else's feelings first that she probably forgot she had feelings of her own. She's using Kim's own language against her. For years, Kim taught her children that certain things were non-negotiable, faith was non-negotiable, family loyalty was non-negotiable, respect for parents was non-negotiable. Now Lydia has flipped the script. Respect for her marriage is non-negotiable, her boundaries are non-negotiable. And the person she's drawing that line against is the very woman who taught her how to draw it. This is the trap Kim has built for herself without even realizing it. She spent decades raising her children to have strong convictions, to stand firm in their beliefs, to know what they would and would not accept. She just never expected those convictions to be turned against her. She never expected to be on the receiving end of the boundaries she taught them to set. And now she's standing in the middle of a family that's more fractured than ever, wondering why no one's rushing to give her the respect she feels she deserves. The answer is sitting right in front of her. You can't spend 25 years demanding absolute obedience and then act surprised when your children don't know how to have a reciprocal relationship with you. You can't teach them that love means control and then expect them to trust you when you say you've changed. You can't show up with the same person who caused so much conflict and ask them to just move past it without addressing the lies you told about him in the first place. The professional stakes here are massive too. Welcome to Plathville is entering its 8th season, and reality TV is a fickle business. Shows don't last this long unless they maintain viewer investment, and viewer investment depends on authenticity. People watch these shows because they want to see real families working through real problems. They want the moments of breakthrough and the moments of breakdown. They want to believe that what they're watching matters. But when a central figure starts rewriting history, when storylines shift to accommodate someone's changing narrative, viewers notice. They start questioning what's real and what's manufactured. They start feeling like they're being played. And once that happens, it's very hard to win them back. Kim's credibility isn't just a personal issue anymore. It's a professional liability for the entire show. If viewers don't trust what they're seeing, they stop watching. And if they stop watching, the show doesn't continue. It's that simple. The financial implications extend beyond just the show itself. The Plath family has built a brand around their visibility, speaking engagements, social media partnerships, whatever opportunities come with being recognizable. That all depends on public goodwill. And public goodwill is a finite resource. Every time Kim appears to be manipulating the narrative, every time she seems more concerned with her image than with her actual relationships, she drains a little bit more of that goodwill. She might not care what strangers on the internet think about her, but she should care whether her family can continue to support themselves through this platform, because that platform is only as strong as the audience's belief in its authenticity. The Lydia situation represents something Kim never anticipated. For years, she positioned herself as the family's moral compass, the one who decided what was acceptable and what wasn't. But morality is a funny thing. Once you teach someone how to think critically about right and wrong, you can't control where they apply those lessons. Lydia looked at her mother's behavior and she made a judgment. She decided that the gossip, the undermining, the lack of support for her marriage, those things were wrong. And she decided that she wouldn't tolerate them anymore. That's not rebellion. That's moral reasoning. That's the logical outcome of everything Kim claimed to believe about right and wrong. The problem is, Kim wanted her children to be moral, but she also wanted them to be obedient. She never realized that those two things eventually conflict. You can't raise someone to have strong convictions and then expect them to ignore those convictions when they're inconvenient for you. The older children have been dealing with this dynamic for years. Ethan was the first to really break away, and his journey has been painful to watch. He married Olivia, a woman Kim never fully accepted. The tension between Kim and Olivia became one of the show's central conflicts, with Kim banning Olivia from seeing the younger kids and Ethan caught in the middle. Over the seasons, we've watched Ethan struggle to reconcile his love for his family with his growing awareness that his upbringing wasn't healthy. He's talked openly about the things he missed out on, the social skills he never developed, the way his parents' control stunted his ability to navigate the world. And through all of that, Kim's response has rarely been acknowledgement or apology. It's been defensive, it's been justified, it's been a relentless focus on how she's the one being mistreated. Micah and Mariah took different paths, but they arrived at similar conclusions. Micah moved to California, became a model, and started experiencing life completely outside the Plath bubble. He's talked about how overwhelming it was at first, how he had to learn basic social cues that most people develop in adolescence. But he's also talked about the freedom of finally being able to make his own choices, to decide for himself what he believes and how he wants to live. Mariah went through a more turbulent transition. She dove headfirst into the independence she'd been denied, changing her look, pursuing music, dating. She's made mistakes along the way, and she's been open about those mistakes. But what's striking is how often those mistakes have been used against her by her parents, particularly Kim. Rather than supporting Mariah through her learning curve, Kim has often seemed judgmental, distant, more concerned with appearances than with her daughter's actual well-being. Now, Isaac is coming of age in the middle of all this chaos. He's been quietly building a life, working as a pilot, and there are reports he's moving quickly in a new relationship. The pattern with Plath children is that they tend to accelerate once they break free. They've been held back for so long that they sprint to catch up. And every time another child breaks away, Kim seems to take it personally. She seems to interpret their independence as rejection, their choices as criticism of her parenting. She can't seem to see that this is just what healthy development looks like. Children grow up. They form their own identities. They make choices their parents wouldn't make. That's not betrayal. That's biology. But in the Plath family, it's always felt like something more. It's always felt like a battle for control. And now Kim has returned to the farm, the physical center of all that control, with Ken by her side. The symbolism is almost too perfect. She's literally standing in the same spaces where she once ruled absolutely, but everything has changed. The children aren't children anymore. The authority she once held is gone. The family structure that kept everyone in their designated roles has collapsed. And she's brought along the one person who represents everything the children are struggling to accept. Ken isn't just her boyfriend. He's proof that Kim's priorities have shifted. He's the evidence that the life she's building doesn't center around her children anymore. And while that's her right, while she's allowed to pursue her own happiness, she can't expect them to celebrate it. She can't expect them to embrace someone who represents the dissolution of their family, especially when she wasn't honest about how that relationship developed. The credibility gap keeps widening. Last season, Kim presented a narrative. She was single, focused on her children, trying to rebuild. This season, she's presenting a different narrative. She's in love, building a future, hoping everyone can accept her choices. But the gap between those narratives is where trust goes to die. The children can see the inconsistency. They can see that their mother's story changes based on what's convenient for her at the moment. And once you realize someone is willing to reshape reality to suit their needs, it's almost impossible to trust anything they say. Every conversation becomes an interrogation. Every statement becomes something to verify. That's no way to rebuild a relationship. That's no way to heal. The DUI situation from 2023 adds another layer to all of this. Kim was arrested for DUI after a traffic stop in Georgia. The details that emerged were uncomfortable. Body camera footage showed her struggling with field sobriety tests. There were reports about what she said to officers, about how she behaved. It was a public, humiliating moment for someone who'd spent her entire adult life projecting an image of moral superiority. And how did Kim handle it? She acknowledged it, but she also framed it as a mistake, a one-time error, something she was learning from. Maybe that's fair. Maybe everyone deserves grace for their worst moments. But in the context of everything else, it became another data point, another piece of evidence in the case the children were building against her. Because here's what the children have learned. They've learned that the woman who judged everyone else, who held them to impossible standards, who made them feel inadequate for not measuring up to her ideals, that woman was human after all. She made mistakes, she had weaknesses, she did things she shouldn't have done. And the realization isn't a relief, it's resentment. It's the bitter understanding that they spent years being controlled by someone who was just as flawed as they were, but who never extended them the grace she now expects for herself. That's the double standard that breaks families. You can't hold your children to a standard you don't meet yourself. You can't demand accountability from them while making excuses for yourself. And that's exactly what Kim has been doing. The trailer for season 8 is full of moments that reveal this dynamic. There's a scene where Kim says, "I've been working so hard on myself." And maybe she has. Maybe the last few years have genuinely been a period of growth and reflection. But growth isn't something you announce. It's something you demonstrate. It's something other people notice without being told. When you have to tell your children how much you've changed, it usually means they haven't seen the evidence themselves. And they haven't. What they've seen is their mother moving quickly into a new relationship, changing her story about that relationship, bringing that relationship back into their lives despite the tension it causes, and continuing to center her own experience above theirs. That's not growth. That's just a new version of the same pattern. Barry, meanwhile, is thriving in a way that seems to surprise everyone. After years of being portrayed as the quieter, more passive parent, he's emerged as something unexpected. He's dating. He's working on himself. He's maintaining relationships with the children in a way that feels more natural and less conditional. The press release for the new season describes him as stepping confidently into this next chapter and ready to see where dating might lead. There's something almost lighthearted about the way he's approaching this new phase of life. He's not demanding anything from anyone. He's not trying to control the narrative. He's just living his life and staying present for his kids. And the contrast with Kim couldn't be more stark. This matters because it reframes everything the children experienced. For years, Barry was portrayed as complicit in the control. He went along with Kim's rules, he enforced her boundaries, he presented a united front. The children could have easily blamed him just as much as they blamed her, but his post-divorce behavior has shifted that perception. By not fighting, by not demanding, by simply being available without conditions, he's earning the relationship with his children that Kim is struggling to maintain. He's proving that you don't have to control people to keep them in your life. You don't have to demand respect to receive it. You just have to show up consistently and let them decide what kind of relationship they want to have with you. Kim seems incapable of this approach. She can't stop pushing. She can't stop insisting that things should be a certain way. She's returned to the farm, but she's returned with expectations. She's returned with demands. She's returned with a boyfriend that half the family can't stand and a story that keeps changing. And she's genuinely confused about why the children aren't rushing to welcome her back. She doesn't see that the very act of demanding respect makes it impossible to receive it. Respect, real respect, is freely given. It's earned through consistent behavior over time. You can't negotiate it. You can't demand it. You can only inspire it. And right now, Kim isn't inspiring much of anything except frustration. The failed emotional appeals are painful to watch because they feel so calculated. In the trailer, there are moments where Kim tries to connect, tries to show vulnerability. She talks about wanting to build a future. She even mentions the possibility of having another baby with Ken, which would be her 10th child, but her first with a new partner. These are the kinds of statements designed to soften hearts, to make viewers think maybe she really has changed, maybe she really wants to start fresh. But the problem is the context. These vulnerable moments are sandwiched between scenes of conflict, between moments where Kim is clearly still operating from the same playbook she always has. The vulnerability doesn't feel authentic. It feels like a strategy. It feels like she's saying what she thinks people want to hear rather than actually feeling what she's saying. The children have become experts at detecting this. They've had years of practice reading their mother, years of learning to distinguish between genuine emotion and performance. And they're not buying what she's selling anymore. When Kim sits down with Lydia and tries to reminisce about how close they used to be, Lydia doesn't soften. She doesn't reach across the table and take her mother's hand. She says flatly that talking to Kim felt like talking to a brick wall. That's not anger. That's exhaustion. That's the sound of someone who's given up pretending that things are different than they are. Lydia isn't trying to hurt her mother. She's just stopped protecting her. She's stopped absorbing the discomfort to make the conversation easier. She's letting Kim feel the full weight of what she's created. And Kim's response to that weight is telling. She doesn't apologize. She doesn't acknowledge Lydia's pain. She pauses, looks uncertain, and says, I don't know, when asked if she'll apologize to Lydia and Zach. I don't know. 3 words that say everything about where Kim actually is in her journey of growth. If she had genuinely done the work, if she had really examined her behavior and its impact on her children, the apology would already exist. It wouldn't be something she had to think about. It wouldn't be a question mark. She would have come to Lydia already having done that work, already prepared to make amends. But she didn't. She came expecting Lydia to meet her where she is, not realizing that Lydia has moved on. Lydia has built a life, a marriage, a sense of self that doesn't depend on her mother's approval anymore. She's not waiting for Kim to figure it out. She's not holding space for Kim to eventually get there. She's living her life. And if Kim wants to be part of it, Kim needs to catch up. This is the reality check that Kim seems unable to process. For 25 years, she was the center of her children's universe. Everything revolved around her rules, her expectations, her version of right and wrong. But universes expand. Children grow up. They build their own centers of gravity. They stop orbiting their parents and start orbiting their own lives. That's healthy. That's normal. That's what's supposed to happen. But Kim never prepared for it. She never built a relationship with her children that could survive their independence because she never truly believed they would become independent. She thought the rules would hold forever. She thought the control would last. And now she's standing in the middle of a family that has scattered in a dozen different directions, wondering why no one is looking to her for directions anymore. The isolation is almost complete. The older children have their own lives, their own priorities, their own boundaries. The younger children are caught in the middle, trying to navigate relationships with both parents while processing the divorce and all the chaos that came with it. Barry is moving forward, dating, staying connected without demanding anything. Even Ken, the boyfriend Kim chose over family harmony, can't fully be her ally in this because his presence is part of what caused the conflict in the first place. She's surrounded by people, but she's fundamentally alone in her inability to understand what went wrong. And that inability to understand is the core of the tragedy. Kim genuinely seems confused about why her children are pulling away. She seems to believe that she's the victim here, that she's been misunderstood, that everyone is being unfair to her. There's a moment in the trailer where she says, I think it's just really easy to put a label on someone and say, this is who they are. And she's not wrong about that. People do get labeled. People do get reduced to their worst moments. But Kim isn't being labeled unfairly. She's being seen clearly clearly. The children aren't judging her based on rumors or gossip. They're judging her based on decades of direct experience. They're judging her based on how she treated them, how she treated their siblings, how she's handling this transition. The label isn't coming from nowhere. It's coming from the life she actually lived. The thematic hypocrisy is impossible to escape. Kim raised her children to believe in absolute truth, in right and wrong, in accountability. She taught them that behavior matters, that choices have consequences, that you can't just do whatever you want without regard for others. And now she's living in the world those lessons created. Her children are holding her accountable. They're telling her that her behavior has consequences. They're refusing to pretend that everything is fine when it's not. This is exactly what she taught them to do. She just never imagined they'd do it to her. She never imagined being on the other side of the moral framework she built. The season hasn't even aired yet, and already the narrative is clear. Kim returns to the farm with Ken, expecting a second chance. She finds Lydia transformed, unwilling to accept the same patterns. She finds the older children distant, protective of the lives they've built. She finds Barry, of all people, modeling what healthy post-divorce co-parenting actually looks like. And she finds herself unable to bridge the gap, unable to offer the apologies that might actually make a difference, unable to see that the problem isn't her children's unwillingness to forgive. The problem is her unwillingness to truly change. Because changing would mean admitting things she's never admitted. It would mean looking at her children and saying, I was wrong, I hurt you, I controlled you in ways that weren't healthy. It would mean apologizing without conditions, without explanations, without justifications. It would mean accepting that she might not get the relationship she wants, that the damage might be permanent, that some wounds don't fully heal, even with the best efforts. And Kim doesn't seem capable of that. She doesn't seem capable of sitting in the discomfort of her own failure without immediately trying to manage the narrative, to explain herself, to make it about something other than her choices. The point of no return is approaching fast. There's a moment coming in this season, probably multiple moments, where Kim will have to decide. She'll have to decide whether she can actually hear what her children are saying, whether she can actually see herself through their eyes, whether she can actually change. And based on everything we've seen so far, based on the trailer, based on the press release, based on the patterns that have played out over 8 seasons, the signs aren't good. Kim keeps doing what Kim has always done. She keeps centering herself. She keeps managing the narrative. She keeps expecting everyone else to accommodate her. And the children, they keep getting stronger. They keep building lives that don't depend on her. They keep learning to set boundaries and hold them. Lydia's transformation is the most striking because she was always the one least likely to change. But she has changed. She's married now. She's finding her voice. She's learning that she doesn't have to accept treatment that hurts her just because it comes from family. That's growth. That's real growth. The kind that comes from hard work and honest self-reflection. The kind Kim claims to have done but hasn't yet demonstrated. Here's what makes this story resonate beyond just the Plath family. Everyone has experienced something like this. Everyone has had a relationship where someone wanted credit for changing without actually doing the work. Everyone has had someone demand respect they haven't earned, demand trust they haven't rebuilt, demand closeness they've destroyed. Kim Plath has become a symbol of that particular kind of frustration. She represents every parent who can't see their children as separate people, every partner who thinks apologies should erase consequences, every person who wants the benefits of a relationship without the responsibilities. The show has documented this family for 8 seasons now. We've watched the children grow up, watched them struggle, watched them find their way. We've watched Kim and Barry's marriage crumble and their post-divorce lives take shape. We've watched the farm go from a controlled environment to a place where everyone is figuring out their own relationship to the family and to each other. Through all of it, one pattern has remained consistent. Kim wants things to be different, but she doesn't want to be different. She wants her children to trust her, but she doesn't want to earn that trust. She wants respect, but she doesn't want to offer the respect she's demanding. And now we're heading into season 8 with all of this tension fully exposed. The trailer promises confrontations, emotional conversations, moments of truth. It promises Lydia standing firm, Kim struggling to understand, Barry moving forward. It promises the kind of family drama that keeps viewers coming back season after season. But beneath all of that, beneath the produced moments and the edited conversations, there's something more. There's a real family trying to figure out how to exist after everything fell apart. There are real children trying to protect themselves from the parents who hurt them. There's a real woman, Kim Plath, facing the consequences of choices she made over decades and not handling it well. The question the season will answer, the question everyone is waiting to see resolved, is whether Kim can finally hear what her children are telling her, whether she can put aside her defensiveness long enough to actually listen, whether she can offer the apology that Lydia deserves, not the conditional apology that comes with expectations, but the real one, the one that asks nothing in return, whether she can accept that her children might never see her the way she wants to be seen and love them anyway, whether she can let go of control and trust that the relationships she wants will come back to her naturally if she creates the right conditions. Because that's the thing about control. It feels like strength when you're holding it, but it's actually a weakness. It's fear. It's the inability to trust that people will choose you if you don't force them to. Kim built her life on control because she was afraid of the outside world, afraid of her children making mistakes, afraid of losing them. And in trying so hard to keep them, she pushed them away. She created the very distance she was trying to prevent. Now she has a chance to try something different, to let go, to trust, to accept that her children are adults who get to make their own choices, including the choice of whether to have a relationship with her. She has a chance to learn what Barry seems to have figured out, that being available without demands, being present without conditions, being loving without control, that's what actually brings people back. That's what builds relationships that last. Whether she'll take that chance, whether she can actually change, whether this season ends with reconciliation or further fracture, we'll have to watch to find out. But one thing is already clear. The woman who spent years demanding respect from her children is finally learning what respect actually costs. It costs everything she used to believe in. It costs the control she held so tightly. It costs the narrative she built about who she is and who her children should be. And she might not be willing to pay that price. She might not be able to. So what do you think? Is Kim genuinely capable of the kind of change her children need to see? Or is this just another season of the same patterns dressed up in a new language? Will Lydia continue to hold her boundaries, or will she eventually soften and let her mother back in? Do you think Ken's presence makes reconciliation impossible, or could the children eventually accept him if Kim handles things differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all, and I'm genuinely curious where people land on this. And if you want to stay updated on everything happening with the Plath family as season 8 unfolds, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We'll be covering every episode, every confrontation, every moment that matters. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.